The archive did not hum. It breathed. Lyra Vec had always thought that was the strangest thing about the Concord's central data vault, the way silence moved. Not empty, not still, but alive in a subtle, rhythmic way, as if the entire structure pulsed with stored memory. Rows of suspended consoles glowed faintly in the dim chamber, each one holding fragments of a galaxy mapped, catalogued, and ordered into perfection. Order was everything here. Which was why the anomaly unsettled her the moment she saw it. She leaned closer to the projection, narrowing her eyes. The holographic map stretched outward in 3 dimensions, thousands of star systems marked by precise points of light, each labeled, indexed, and cross-referenced. Trade routes arced between them in delicate threads, shifting with real-time updates. It was the most accurate representation of known space in existence. Except for the void. It sat at the far edge of the Orion Arm, a perfect absence in a universe of meticulous detail. Not darkness. Darkness implied something hidden. This was worse. It was clean. Defined. A section carved out so completely it left no trace of what had been there before. Lyra extended her hand, dragging the map closer. The void remained sharp at its edges, refusing to blur or distort like corrupted data would. "Isolate region," she murmured. The system responded instantly. The rest of the galaxy faded away, leaving only the empty sector suspended before her. No stars. No radiation signatures. No debris fields. Nothing. Her fingers hovered over the control panel. Cross-reference archival logs. A pause, brief, but long enough to feel deliberate. Then, no data available. Lyra frowned. That wasn't possible. Every region, even uncharted space, held something. Gravitational anomalies, background radiation, unexplored clusters, absence itself left fingerprints. But this? This was surgical. She adjusted the query. Access historical mapping records. Pre-Concord integration. The system flickered. For a fraction of a second, something appeared. Coordinates. Star designations. A name. Then it vanished. Lyra straightened slowly, her pulse quickening. "That's not an error," she whispered. Errors didn't behave like that. She initiated a deeper scan, bypassing the standard interface and tapping into archival layering protocols. The map shimmered, its structure unfolding into nested timelines, decades, centuries, millennia of recorded space. And there it was. Faint. Buried. Not gone, removed. Star systems blinked into existence across the void, ghostly and unstable, like memories struggling to resurface. Their designations were incomplete, their data fragmented, but they existed. Once. Lyra exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Someone had erased them. Not deleted. Not lost. Erased. A quiet footstep broke her focus. "You're working late." Lyra turned. Supervisor Renkel stood at the edge of the platform, his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. His species, Varelian, didn't display emotion the way others did. Still, there was something in his stillness that felt attentive. "Cross-referencing anomalies," Lyra replied, keeping her tone neutral. "This sector has no stellar data." Ren glanced at the projection. His gaze lingered on the void for a moment too long. "That region is restricted." Lyra folded her arms. "Restricted from navigation, yes. Not from archival indexing. Even uncharted zones are catalogued. Not this one." "That's not an answer." Ren met her eyes. For a brief moment, something flickered beneath his composed exterior. Hesitation, perhaps. Then it was gone. "It's the only one you'll get." Silence settled between them, heavier than before. Lyra turned back to the console, masking her frustration. "I'm just ensuring map integrity. If there's missing data, it should be corrected." "It has been corrected," Ren said quietly. That made her pause. Corrected. Not incomplete. Not corrupted. Corrected. She glanced over her shoulder. "By removing entire systems?" Ren didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was softer. Some records are not meant to be restored. The words lingered, unsettling in their certainty. Lyra studied him for a moment longer, then nodded slightly. Understood. Ren inclined his head and turned away, his footsteps fading into the distant corridors. Only when he was gone did Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She waited. Counted the seconds. Listened for surveillance pings, system checks, any sign that her activity was being monitored more closely than usual. Nothing. Good. She returned to the console, her movements more deliberate now. Bypass query restrictions, she murmured. The system hesitated. Authorization required. Lyra didn't hesitate. She overrode it. The map flickered violently, its clean edges fracturing as suppressed data pushed through. More systems emerged, hundreds of them, scattered across the void. Their identifiers were incomplete, their histories stripped down to bare coordinates, but they were undeniably real. She zoomed in on one. Designation, SOL3. Status, redacted. Origin classification, redacted. A single fragment of text remained, stubborn against deletion. Terran origin point. Lyra felt a chill run through her. Terran. The word was unfamiliar, yet it carried weight, like a term that should have been common knowledge but had been deliberately forgotten. She expanded the entry. A warning flashed across the interface. Unauthorized query detected. The lights in the chamber dimmed slightly, as if responding to the alert. For a moment, the entire archive seemed to hold its breath. Lyra froze. Then the warning vanished. The map stabilized. But something had changed. The void pulsed faintly, its edges less certain now, as though the act of uncovering it had disturbed whatever system maintained its erasure. Lyra's fingers moved quickly. Archive snapshot. Local storage. Data streamed into her personal buffer, fragments of the suppressed region captured before they could disappear again. The process was slow, too slow. She needed more. Overlay current map with pre-restriction data. The projection shifted. Two versions of the galaxy aligned over each other, the present, pristine and complete, and the past, fractured but persistent. The difference was staggering. Entire clusters had been removed. Trade routes severed. Regions that once connected the Orion Arm to deeper space now simply ended. And at the center of it all, the sole designation pulsed faintly. Lyra zoomed in, her breath shallow. For a brief, flickering instant, another label appeared beside it. Then it vanished. But she had seen it. Human territory. The words echoed in her mind. Human. Terran. The same. Her hand stilled. A civilization. Not lost. Not destroyed. Erased. A faint tremor ran through the station, barely perceptible but enough to make the holographic map ripple. The void reacted, its clean edges tightening, as if resisting her intrusion. Lyra leaned back slowly, her thoughts racing. An entire region of space, deliberately removed from every official record. A species, wiped from collective knowledge. And a system, soul, at its heart. She glanced toward the darkened corridor where Ren had disappeared. Some records are not meant to be restored. He hadn't sounded authoritative. He had sounded afraid. Lyra turned back to the map, her reflection faintly visible in the shimmering projection. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she saved the data. If the Concord had gone to such lengths to hide this, it wasn't just history they were protecting. It was something else. Something dangerous. She stared at the empty space, its silence heavier now, as if it watched her in return. What are you hiding? She whispered. The map didn't answer. It simply ended. And for the first time, Lyra understood that the boundary wasn't a limit of exploration. It was a warning. She closed the interface, her decision already made. If the truth had been erased, then she would find it where it began. At the edge of the map. The archive felt different the next cycle. Lyra noticed it the moment she stepped into the chamber. The silence was tighter, less fluid, as if the system itself had narrowed its awareness. Lights glowed at a slightly higher intensity. Surveillance nodes drifted along their paths with more purpose. Even the consoles seemed more responsive, their interfaces quicker to react, less tolerant of delay. She moved through the space without hesitation, though her mind catalogued every change. They knew something had been accessed. Not what? Not yet. But enough to watch. Lyra reached her station and activated the display. The map appeared instantly, pristine and untouched, the void once again clean and absolute. No traces of her previous work remained. Of course not. She didn't try to access it again. Not directly. Instead, she opened a different panel. Archival indexing, historical compression layers, fragments of data that most analysts ignored because they were too inefficient to process. Old data hid in inefficient places. Begin reconstruction, she said quietly. The system complied. Lines of encoded information cascaded across the screen, stripped of formatting and stripped of meaning at first glance. But Lyra had spent years navigating this chaos, learning how patterns survived even when their context was removed. She wasn't searching for systems now. She was searching for events. An absence that large didn't happen without consequence. Minutes passed. Then something surfaced. A cluster of entries, buried beneath centuries of compression. Their headers were intact, though the bodies had been gutted. Classification, extinction level event. Lyra leaned forward, her pulse quickening. Expand record. The system hesitated, again, that brief delay that suggested resistance rather than limitation. Then the file opened. Fragments filled the display. Rapid system loss. Non-biological propagation. Adaptive intelligence. Containment failure. The sentences broke apart, stripped of continuity, but the pattern was clear. Something had spread. Fast. She scrolled further. Concorde fleets mobilized. Losses exceed projections. Communication collapse across sectors. Lyra's throat tightened. Entire sectors. Gone. She cross-referenced the coordinates embedded in the fragments. They aligned with the void. Not perfectly, but enough. Whatever this was, it had consumed that region of space. Or passed through it. Her fingers hovered over the interface. Continue. More data surfaced. Last confirmed contact. Engagement unsuccessful. Recommend full evacuation. Then, nothing. The record ended. Not concluded. Not archived. Cut. Lyra sat back slowly, her mind racing. An extinction-level threat. One that overwhelmed the Concorde at the height of its power. And then, silence. No resolution. No victory. Just absence. She initiated a broader search. Locate follow-up records. Post-incident analysis. The system responded immediately. No records found. That was impossible. No event of that magnitude simply vanished from documentation. There would be analysis, reconstruction, lessons learned. Unless those had been removed as well. Lyra's gaze drifted back to the void on the map. The missing systems. The erased history. And at the center. Soul. A thought formed, quiet and persistent. She opened a new query. Search for Terran references. All archives. The system froze. Not slowed. Stopped. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the interface flickered. A warning appeared. Access to this data is restricted. Lyra exhaled slowly. So it's true, she murmured. She didn't override it immediately. That would draw attention, more than she had already. Instead, she shifted tactics. Indirect queries. Cross-referenced identifiers. Fragments that weren't flagged individually. It took time. Too much time. But eventually, something slipped through. A transmission log. Unindexed. Unreferenced. Ignored. She opened it. Static filled the audio channel, layered with distortion, as if the signal had traveled through interference far beyond normal range. Then a voice emerged, faint, strained, but unmistakably real. This is Captain Elias Ward. Seoul Defense Network. Lyra leaned closer, barely breathing. Containment protocols active. We are holding the line. A burst of static cut through the message. Do not send reinforcements. I repeat, do not send reinforcements. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the console. If it breaches beyond this sector, there will be nothing left to save. The signal faltered. Then, quieter. We will end it here. Silence followed. No conclusion. No confirmation. Just an empty channel. Lyra sat back, her mind struggling to process what she had heard. They had faced it. Alone. She replayed the message, isolating the metadata. Timestamp, origin coordinates, signal degradation patterns. It was real. Not fabricated. Not corrupted. And it had come from the very region the Concorde had erased. Her gaze hardened. Why hide this? She whispered. The answer came unbidden. Because they failed. Or because they succeeded in a way the Concorde couldn't accept. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Incoming summons. Lyra's heart skipped. She glanced at the notification. Supervisor Rincal requests your presence. Of course he did. She closed the transmission log, masking her activity behind routine data checks. The system responded smoothly, offering no indication of the deeper queries she had executed. Good. She stood, smoothing her expression into something neutral. As she moved toward the exit, she noticed the surveillance nodes again. They tracked her passage, their sensors adjusting minutely as she passed beneath them. Not overt, but deliberate. The corridor outside the archive was brighter, the air cooler. Lyra walked steadily, though her thoughts raced ahead. They were closing in. She needed more information, and she needed it quickly. Ren's office stood at the far end of the sector, its entrance marked by a simple interface panel. She paused before it, steadying herself, then stepped inside. Ren stood at the far window, his back to her, the vast expanse of the station visible beyond him. Lyra, he said without turning. You've been accessing restricted layers. Not a question. She kept her voice calm. Cross-referencing anomalies. That region is not an anomaly. Then what is it? Rin turned slowly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said, a boundary. Lyra held his gaze. Between what? Ren's expression remained unreadable. Between what we know, he said, and what we chose to forget. A chill ran through her. That's not a reason, she said quietly. That's an excuse. Ren stepped closer. There are records, he said, his voice low, that exist only to remind us why we survive. And others that exist to ensure we continue to do so. And this is which? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer than before. Both. Lyra felt something shift inside her. Not fear. Not yet. But something close. Why erase them? She asked. Ren studied her, as if weighing something. Then he said, because some victories cost more than defeat. The words settled heavily between them. Lyra searched his face for any sign of deception. She found none. Only restraint. Who were they? She asked. Ren's gaze flickered, just once. Then he said, you already know. Lyra didn't respond. She didn't need to. The silence confirmed it. Humans. She stepped back slightly. And you expect me to accept that? She said. An entire civilization removed from history? I expect you to understand, Ren replied. I don't. Then stop looking. The finality in his tone was unmistakable. Lyra held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Understood. She turned and left without another word. The corridor felt colder now. More confined. Lyra walked quickly, her thoughts already moving ahead. They weren't going to tell her the truth. Not fully. Not ever. She needed another source. Someone outside the Concorde's control. Someone who dealt in information the system couldn't regulate. A memory surfaced. A name. Keth Aaron. Data broker. Smuggler. Specialist in lost records. Dangerous. Exactly what she needed. Lyra changed direction, heading toward the lower levels of the station where regulation thinned and oversight became less precise. If the Concorde had buried the truth, she would dig it out. And if what she had seen was only the beginning, then the void wasn't empty. It was hiding something vast. Something the entire galaxy had chosen to ignore. Not out of ignorance, but out of fear. And for the first time, Lyra began to understand why. Because whatever waited in that erased region had once faced extinction and survived. The lower decks did not pretend to be orderly. Lyra stepped off the transit lift into a corridor that smelled faintly of coolant and burned circuits. Light strips flickered overhead, casting uneven shadows across metal walls patched with mismatched panels. The Concorde's precision ended several levels above. Down here, systems were repaired, repurposed, or ignored depending on necessity. And necessity ruled everything. She moved with quiet confidence, though her senses stayed alert. Every sound carried differently in this place, footsteps echoing too long, voices slipping through thin partitions, the distant hum of engines bleeding through the structure. It felt alive, but not in the controlled way of the archives. This place breathed on its own terms. A narrow passage opened to a wider chamber filled with scattered vendors, technicians, and traders. Some glanced at her as she passed, noting her clean attire, her upright posture, signs of someone from the upper levels. Others ignored her entirely. Lyra slowed near a cluster of terminals, scanning faces. "Keth Aaron," she said quietly. A nearby figure chuckled. "You don't find Keth by asking." Lyra turned. The speaker leaned against the console, arms crossed, eyes sharp with interest. "Then how do I find him?" The figure tilted their head. "Depends. Are you worth finding?" Lyra held their gaze. "I'm looking for information. Restricted archives. Pre-Concorde incidents." The amusement vanished. "That's not information," the figure said. "That's trouble. Then point me toward it." A pause. Then the figure gestured toward a darkened corridor. "End of the line. If he's in the mood, he'll listen. If not," a faint smile, "you'll wish you hadn't asked?" Lyra nodded once and moved on. The corridor narrowed, the lighting dimming further until only a few scattered panels illuminated the path. At the end, a single door stood closed, its surface scratched and worn from years of use. She hesitated for a moment. Then knocked. Nothing. She waited. Then the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was cluttered, equipment stacked against the walls, cables running across the floor, multiple screens flickering with fragmented data streams. At the center sat a man, his posture relaxed, eyes fixed on a display that shifted too quickly to follow. He didn't look up. "You took your time," he said. Lyra stepped inside. "You knew I was coming?" Keth Aaron smiled faintly. "You're not subtle." She closed the door behind her. "Neither are you." "True." He leaned back, studying her now. "So, a Concorde archivist walks into my workspace asking about restricted data. That's either bold or desperate. Curious. Same thing, eventually." Lyra crossed her arms. "I need information on a suppressed sector. Or INR missing systems." Keth's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. "That's not a request," he said. "That's a warning. I'm not here for warnings." "No," he agreed. "You're here for answers. Which means you don't understand the question yet." Lyra stepped closer. "Then explain it." Keth tapped a control. The screens shifted, displaying a simplified map, less detailed than the Concorde's version, but broader in scope. Trade routes, conflict zones, exploration markers. And the void. Unlike the archive's clean absence, this one flickered, unstable, as if something resisted its existence. "You see that?" Keth said. "That's not empty space. That's a hole someone keeps patching." Lyra watched as faint lines appeared within the void, routes, signals, fragments of something hidden beneath layers of suppression. They erased it, she said. They tried, Keth corrected. Erasing something that big leaves scars. You just have to know where to look. Lyra's gaze shifted to him. What was there? Keth didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up a file, corrupted, incomplete. You ever hear of the collapse? He asked. No. Exactly. He activated the file. Images flickered across the screens, distorted, fragmented. Fleets burning. Systems going dark. Signals cutting off mid-transmission. This happened before the Concorde solidified control, Keth said. Something spread through the galaxy. Fast. It didn't negotiate. Didn't communicate. Just consumed. Lyra's chest tightened. The extinction-level event, she said. Keth nodded once. Every species fought it. Every fleet we had. Didn't matter. It adapted. Learned. Grew stronger with every encounter. Lyra watched the images, her mind racing. What stopped it? She asked. Keth's smile faded. That's the part they don't teach. He brought up another file. A transmission. The same one Lyra had found, Captain Elias Ward, his voice strained but resolute. We will end it here. The message cut. Keth leaned forward. That signal came from the center of the void. Lyra felt a chill. Humans, she said. Keth studied her. So you've seen something. Enough to know they were there. They still are. The words hit harder than she expected. They survived? She asked. Keth didn't answer directly. Instead, he tapped the console again. The map zoomed in, focusing on the void. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, coordinates appeared. Faint. Hidden. Those aren't in any official database, Keth said. But they exist. Signals go in. Nothing comes out. Lyra stared at them. Why hide them? She asked. Keth leaned back, his expression unreadable. Because whatever happened out there. He paused. It didn't end cleanly. Silence settled between them. Then Keth said, You're not just here for answers, are you? Lyra met his gaze. No. You're going. She didn't deny it. Keth exhaled slowly. Then you're already too far gone. Give me the coordinates. He hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. You don't understand what you're walking into, he said. Then help me. Keth studied her for a long moment. Then he transferred the data. A soft chime confirmed the upload. Lyra felt the weight of it settle in her mind. Thank you, she said. Keth shook his head. Don't thank me. I just made your problem worse. She turned toward the door. Lyra, he called. She paused. If you find them, Keth said, his voice quieter now. Don't expect them to be what you think. Lyra glanced back. What do you think they are? She asked. Keth held her gaze. Survivors, he said. And survivors don't stay the same. Lyra left without another word. The docking bay was quiet. Too quiet. Her ship, a small survey vessel, sat at the far end, its systems already warming as she approached. She had arranged the launch hours earlier, before the summons, before the deeper questions. Before the truth began to take shape. She moved quickly, her steps steady despite the tension building inside her. Halfway across the bay, a voice echoed through the chamber. Lyra Vec. She stopped. Turned. High Executor Karzul stood near the entrance, his presence commanding without effort. 2 security units flanked him, silent and still. Lyra's pulse steadied. You're leaving, he said. Exploration assignment, she replied. Karzul studied her. Beyond the boundary. Not a question. Lyra didn't answer. Karzul stepped forward. There is nothing for you there, he said. Then why restrict it? She asked. A pause. Because some truths destroy those who learn them. Lyra met his gaze. Or expose those who hide them. Karzal's expression didn't change. You believe this is about knowledge, he said. It isn't. Then what is it about? Survival. The word carried weight. Lyra felt it. But she didn't step back. They survived, she said. Whatever happened out there, they stopped it. Karzal's gaze hardened. At a cost you cannot comprehend. Then let me see it. Silence stretched between them. Then Karzal said, Turn back. Lyra shook her head. No. For a moment, nothing moved. Then Karzal stepped aside. Then go, he said quietly. And understand why we do not follow. Lyra didn't hesitate. She turned and ran. The ship's ramp sealed behind her as she entered the cockpit. Systems flared to life, engines humming with restrained power. Coordinates locked. Destination confirmed. She initiated launch. The vessel lifted smoothly, clearing the docking bay and slipping into open space. The station receded behind her, its lights fading into the distance. Ahead, the void. Even from orbit, it felt wrong. Not empty. Waiting. Lyra tightened her grip on the controls. Engage jump, she said. The ship responded. Space folded. For a fraction of a second, everything stretched. Then snapped. Silence. No signals. No traffic. No network. Only darkness. Lyra exhaled slowly, scanning the readings. The instruments flickered, struggling to calibrate. Then, shapes emerged. Vast. Broken. A structure drifted ahead, its scale incomprehensible, rings of metal shattered and twisted, fragments orbiting a dark core. It wasn't a station. It was something else. Something that had been destroyed. Lyra stared. What happened here? She whispered. A signal cut through the silence. Clear. Direct. Her console lit up. Incoming transmission. Unknown origin. She hesitated. Then accepted. Static crackled. Then a voice. Calm. Controlled. Human. You shouldn't be here. Lyra's breath caught. The map didn't end. It had been closed. And she had just opened it. The voice did not repeat itself. It lingered in the cockpit, steady and unhurried, as if the speaker already knew Lyra had no intention of leaving. The transmission carried no distortion now, no trace of distance or decay. It was precise, immediate, far too clear for a region the Concorde had declared unreachable. Lyra leaned forward, eyes fixed on the console. Identify yourself, she said. A brief pause followed, measured rather than uncertain. Commander Hale, the voice replied. Sol Defense Network. Lyra felt the word settle, heavy with implication. Sol. The origin point she had uncovered, the center of everything erased. You're human, she said. Another pause, shorter this time. Yes. The confirmation tightened something in her chest. Not relief. Not fear. Something between. I'm Lyra Vec, she said. Galactic Cartographer, Concorde Archive Division. I know who you are. Lyra blinked. How? Your entry vector, your vessel type, your data signature, Hale said. You crossed the boundary with a Concorde vessel carrying restricted archive fragments. You've been observed since you emerged from transit. Lyra glanced at her sensors. They still struggled to resolve anything beyond the debris field ahead. I don't see you, she said. You're not meant to. A flicker of irritation rose. Then show yourself. Silence stretched, not dismissive but deliberate. Why are you here? Hale asked. Lyra steadied herself. Because the galaxy erased you. That wasn't the question. She hesitated. Because I need to know why. The line remained quiet for a moment, as if weighing her response. Then, follow the signal, Hale said. Coordinates appeared on her display, precise and stable, cutting through the chaos of drifting wreckage. Before she could respond, the transmission ended. Lyra exhaled slowly. Then she adjusted her course. The debris field thickened as she advanced. Fragments of metal drifted past the cockpit, sections of hull plating, shattered frameworks, remnants of something vast. Some pieces were smooth and engineered, others jagged and unfamiliar, their surfaces warped into unnatural shapes. Her sensors struggled to classify them. Unknown composition, the system repeated, unable to categorize what it scanned. Lyra leaned closer to the viewport. This wasn't a battle, she murmured. It was something else. Something that had torn itself apart from the inside. A faint glow appeared ahead. Not a star. Not a station. A structure. It emerged slowly from the darkness, its form resolving piece by piece as her ship approached. It was massive, far larger than any Concorde installation she had seen. Its surface was smooth, layered with segmented plates that shifted subtly, as if the entire structure was alive. Not organic. But not entirely mechanical either. Her ship slowed automatically, systems responding to proximity. Unidentified installation, the console reported. Lyra shook her head. No, she whispered. Identified. Human. The structure illuminated, lines of soft white light tracing its contours. A docking port opened ahead, seamless and silent. An invitation. Or a test. Lyra guided her vessel forward. The moment she crossed the threshold, her instruments stabilized. The interference vanished, replaced by a clean, controlled signal environment. Systems recalibrated instantly, as if they had entered a different layer of space entirely. She powered down the engines and sat still for a moment, her pulse steady but strong. Then she stood. The air inside the structure was warm. Not artificially regulated, not sterile. It carried a faint scent, metal, ozone, something unfamiliar but not unpleasant. The corridor extended ahead, its walls smooth and curved, illuminated by soft, indirect light. No visible sources. No visible seams. Lyra moved forward slowly, her footsteps echoing faintly. "Commander Hale," she said. "I'm here." A figure stepped into view. Human. He was taller than she expected, his frame lean but solid, his posture relaxed without losing awareness. His features were sharp, defined, his expression calm but attentive. His eyes held her. They weren't augmented in any obvious way, but something about them felt precise. "Lyra Vec," he said. She stopped a few steps away. "You knew I would come," she said. Hale inclined his head slightly. "We knew someone would. Eventually." Lyra studied him, searching for signs of what the Concorde feared. He looked normal. Too normal. "You've been watching us," she said. "We've been watching the galaxy," Hale corrected. "Why hide?" Hale gestured slightly, and the wall behind him shifted, revealing a wide chamber. Lyra stepped inside, and stopped. The space opened into a vast observation deck, its transparent surface overlooking the debris field she had crossed. From this vantage, its scale became clear. It wasn't just wreckage. It was a graveyard. Thousands of fragments drifted in silent orbit, remnants of structures far larger than any she had seen. Some pieces still moved, slow and deliberate, as if responding to unseen forces. "What is this?" she asked quietly. Hale stepped beside her. "The line," he said. "Between what?" Hale's gaze remained on the field. "Between what was, and what would have been." Lyra turned to him. "The extinction event." Hale nodded once. "It wasn't a force," he said. "Not in the way you understand. It was intelligence. Adaptive. Iterative. It learned from everything it encountered, every weapon, every strategy, every weakness." Lyra felt the weight of his words. "And the Concorde couldn't stop it," she said. "They tried," Hale replied. "So did everyone else." "Then how did you?" Hale was silent for a moment. Then he said, "We stopped trying to fight it." Lyra frowned. "What does that mean?" "It adapted to resistance," Hale said. "So we changed the equation." He gestured toward the debris field. We gave it something it couldn't predict. Lyra followed his gaze. Sacrifice, she said. Hale met her eyes. Transformation. The word hung between them. You changed yourselves, Lyra said slowly. We had to, Hale replied. It learned from patterns. From consistency. So we became inconsistent. Lyra felt a chill. You rewrote yourselves. We evolved, Hale said. Faster than it could. She stared at him, trying to reconcile the calm figure before her with the implication of his words. And it worked, she said. Hale nodded. We contained it. Isolated it. Ended it. Lyra exhaled, her mind racing. And the Concord erased you, she said. They were afraid, Hale replied. Of you? Of what we became. Lyra looked back at the debris field. You saved them. Hale didn't respond. After a moment, he said, We saved what we could. Silence settled. Lyra turned to him. Then why stay here? Hale's expression didn't change, but something in his gaze shifted. Because survival has consequences, he said. And not all of them are safe to share. Lyra understood. Not fully. But enough. The galaxy deserves to know, she said. Does it? Hale asked. Lyra hesitated. If they knew what it took to survive, Hale continued, would they see us as allies? Or as something else? Lyra didn't answer. She didn't have one. Hale stepped back slightly. You came for the truth, he said. Now you have it. Lyra felt the weight of that. And what happens now? She asked. Hale studied her. That, he said, is your decision. The ship drifted at the edge of the debris field once more. Lyra sat in the cockpit, her hands resting lightly on the controls. The coordinates back to Concord space blinked steadily on the display. Behind her, the structure remained hidden, its presence fading as she moved away. Ahead, the galaxy. She opened a transmission channel. Paused. Then began to speak. Exploration log, she said. Restricted sector accessed. Human civilization confirmed. Threat neutralized. Region stable. She stopped. Her fingers hovered over the controls. There was more she could say. More she had learned. More the galaxy would demand. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Then she ended the transmission. Not everything needed to be shared. Not yet. She initiated the jump. Space folded. The void disappeared. The map updated. It was subtle. A small change, almost insignificant. Where the blank space had been, a new designation appeared. Not detailed. Not explained. But present. Human territory, contact discouraged. Lyra studied it for a moment. Then she leaned back, her thoughts quiet. The map hadn't ended. It had stopped. Because beyond that line was something the galaxy wasn't ready to understand. And maybe never would be.